Hello booktube, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Ben, and this is the authors I've read the most tag. So this tag originated with Jeremy Fee, and I was tagged by Mindy at Mindy's Book Journey, and also by Michael K. Vaughan, who just in the sheer numbers that he shared in this tag, murdered this tag. I'm pretty sure that the servants are still cleaning the carnage from the tapestries and gilded sconces of stately Vaughan Manor at this point. My numbers will be nowhere near his. And I was actually kind of surprised by some of the results that I had for which authors I've actually read quite a few things of. As I've mentioned in the past, I've mostly been a nonfiction reader. And I think that has adversely affected my numbers for this. I find that especially when I read history, if I read about a historical event, my instinct is not to go seek out the author again for that same era, but is to seek out a different author to get a different perspective of that era. So I feel like I am more often looking for different authors rather than seeking out the same one over and over again. So many of my numbers are kind of low in terms of reading multiple works by a particular author. So I have left out short stories from this. I've left out plays, poetry. I've really just stuck to, actual books that I've read. And I'm starting with, I'm going to be doing the top 7 because I found that 8, 9, 10, and beyond, I had so many authors tied for that same place with how many I had read. So really, the numbers really don't start climbing until 7, and they're not impressive. So let's start off with this. And I was surprised by what I found out as far as different authors that I've read. Number 7, the author that I've read 5 works from is Jan Friedman, because I've read quite a few of his Star Trek novels. I don't often seek out books based on the author. I do often look at the subject matter and see if it interests me, and happens to be a lot of overlap. He also wrote a lot of hardcover Star Trek novels. So from him I read Reunion, Kalis, this one, Death in Winter, Crossover, and Fortune's Light. This is actually my favorite one by him. He's a little bit hit or miss sometimes for me, but I thought that this one did a pretty good job of looking at historical, I don't necessarily want to say memory, but the use of history in terms of political power. And, do you settle on what's true, or do you settle on the myth? Because essentially they're finding out things about the history of Kalis, this kind of Klingon. Not like a prophet, but somebody who is seen as incredibly important to the Klingon culture, and finding out that certain things might not be true about him. And I thought this was actually a very good examination. This is my favorite Jan Friedman novel, and I think it's actually a pretty good Star Trek novel overall. For number 6, I've got something very different from Jan Friedman, and that would be Jane Austen. I have read 5 of her novels. I read Northanger Abbey, Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, and Sense and Sensibility. My favorite, when I had read them about 8 years ago, was Persuasion. I really like that one. Have not yet read Mansfield Park. Maybe if I take part in Jane Austen July, I believe it is, this year, I'll get that done. But yeah, number 6 is Jane Austen. Number 5, with 6 books read, would be H.G. Wells. Pretty much this whole collection here. So I read The Time Machine, War of the Worlds, Food of the Gods, The Invisible Man, First Men on the Moon, and The Island of Dr. Moreau. Really enjoy H.G. Wells. For number 4, with 7 books, this is probably not going to be a surprise that a lot of people have read 7 books by this author, and that would be J.K. Rowling. 7 books of the Harry Potter series. So don't need to say anything about this one. Tied for 7 for number 3. That would be actually another frequent Star Trek writer, and that is Peter David. Ended up reading quite a few of his Star Trek novels. I've read House of Cards, which was his New Frontier series, number 1. Imzadi, this one here. Q Squared, The Captain's Daughter, Q-in-Law, A Rock and a Hard Place, and Vendetta. So 7 Star Trek books that I've read by him, and I generally like his stuff quite a bit. I think he captures character voices incredibly well, and sometimes he uses some odd phrases for them to use, but otherwise I think he does a pretty good job with his Star Trek novels, and this one especially was pretty good, about an older Riker going back in time to try and save Deanna's life, and pretty good book. And number 2, with 9 books read, that would be Stephen King. Here we have one of the really, not a first edition necessarily, but an early 1974 edition of Carrie. I have read by Stephen King, in addition to this, Pet Sematary, The Gunslinger, Dance Macabre, Elevation, The Shining, It, Salem's Lot, and On Writing. And I do have a lot more that I need to read from Stephen King. But yeah. And tied for 9. First place, but with 9 books, is an author that is one of the few cases that I have especially gone back to this author in particular, and that would be Carl Sagan. This is one of my favorites by him, The Dragons of Eden. One of the reasons that I kept reading Carl Sagan was I took him with me quite often when I would travel. I kind of found his books to be ideal travel companions. So whenever I would go to a different country, I would of course read all kinds of things about the country, and I'd have those books with me and reference, and I would look at them. But sometimes when I wanted to just kind of get outside and experience the world and sit down and read, I would grab a Carl Sagan book and have that in my bag. It was just a combination of his writing. You can definitely hear his voice when he writes. His kind of romantic look at the universe, at the world, how he combined science and history and a really kind of enlightening humanistic philosophy into his writings. I just found that to be a great way for me to get in the right mind frame to appreciate the world around me, wherever I happen to be on the globe. So it's one of my favorites. I remember reading Cosmos in Hungary. I remember being in the Andes Mountains in Ecuador and reading Braca's Brain. So I have other editions behind me over on this shelf here. But I always had these mass market paperbacks inside the bags with me. So yeah, Carl Sagan was my travel companion for many years. So that's it. Those numbers are not at all high, especially compared to Michael K. Vaughan's. But that was the authors I've read the most tag. All right. Thank you, BookTube.